We're going to be talking about truth today and how to find it. And the bottom line is that it is not as mechanical with things like language as it is relational. Jesus spoke about this several times. Once when he gave the great commandment to love God and to love each other. And then also, he says, a new commandment that I give you, again, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. And by this, everyone else will know that you're my people. So that's the love each other part. For the love God part, we're going to hear another writing from a Sufi poet as well. And this is in the form of a meditation. So I invite you to settle in a little bit, get comfortable in your chair, take a moment to bring yourself as fully as you can to this sacred time and space. The meditation speaks of a longing of being connected to God, our inner selves, inviting our conscious selves to move toward this creation, to move toward this connection with our Creator. And this connection is seen through the lens of kinship and friendship. Let's be companions, the two of us. Let's go to the friend, my soul. Let's be close intimates, the two of us, and let's go to the friend, my soul. Let's go before this life is over, before our bodies disappear, before enemies come between us. Let's go to the friend, my soul. Come on, let's go. Don't remain alone. Don't be a chisel in the friend's hand. The only stop will be that station. Let's go to the friend, my soul. Let's leave our towns and cities and gladly suffer for our friend. Let's wrap our arms around our beloved's waist. Let's go to the friend, my soul. Let's not be bewildered by the world. Let's not be cheated by its sudden dying. Let's not sit together, never touching. Let's go to the friend, my soul. Let's give up this transient world and fly to the lasting land of the friend. Let's give up all of the playthings of the world and go to the friend, my soul. Be a guide to me on this journey. Let's set our destination at the friend, not thinking where we begin or end. This world isn't everlasting. With eyes half open, it is tempting, but be a companion of lovers and a lover. And so let's go to the friend, my soul. Before the news of death reaches us, before the hour when he grabs us by the collar, before Azrael, the angel of death, makes his sudden move, let's go to the friend. Let's arrive at divine truth and inquire there about reality. Let's take ourselves with us and go to the friend, my soul. Some of you may know that Lisa and I spent this last week vacationing in a lakeside cabin in beautiful Vermont. While we were there, I stumbled upon an article that references The Sound of Music and was reminded that the real-life Von Trapp family relocated to none other than Vermont after escaping the Nazis back in the 1940s. To this day, descendants of that very family operate the Von Trapp Family Lodge and Resort. It was about 2 hours from where we were vacationing, and we all know the story of the Von Trapps Maria's a nun, becomes a nanny to the 7 kids, falls in love with the captain dad, marries him, and for the captain to escape service to the Nazis, he leads his family to escape in Switzerland. What you may not know is that a vast majority of the story that we all know from the film was fabricated. The article's author, whose name is Rick Herrick, knows about this because he became good friends with the daughter of Kurt. We all remember Kurt, don't we? I mean, the face is like right there in our minds. Herrick says that despite learning about this potentially disappointing inconsistency, the movie always had and always continues to take him to another place. And then he tells the story about his own family. It's the day after Thanksgiving. The leftovers dinner is done. Time for a movie. And to his surprise, his adolescent grandkids let him choose the film. Of course, he picks his all-time favorite, which is The Sound of Music. But about 10 minutes in, it becomes clear that he is the only one being taken to another place by this movie. Recounting that evening, he says, and he is a writer for progressive Christianity. He says, as the Von Trapps were hiking over the mountains into Switzerland, I flipped off the TV and closed my eyes, and it occurred to me how similar this situation was, the authenticity of the story, to the authenticity of the Bible. Historians can only authenticate a few tiny morsels about Jesus, that he was a Jew, that he was in Nazareth, and that he was crucified by Pilate. And that's about it. Scholars have spent lifetimes trying to validate other details, but they differ broadly about the details of his life. So, many Christians, despite these inconsistencies, are still taken to another place upon hearing about and reading about this guy named Jesus. And that even applies to progressive Christians who pretty much say a lot of what the Bible offers lacks historical validity. But then he continues on with the story about his own family. So it's Sunday now, the Sunday after Thanksgiving. His grandson, Landon, the one who fell asleep 15 minutes into the film, is the only evangelical Christian in this otherwise progressive family. Landon, on Sunday, asks his grandpa, our author here, to go to church with him. And Herrick says, the religious scientist in me couldn't resist, and I was not disappointed. So he goes to this service and he describes it as the first 15 minutes being this beautiful gospel music, followed by a long sermon about how Jesus died for our sins so that we might be saved. And unexpectedly, the same being taken away experience to another place happens to our author. But not for the reason you might think. It was not, decidedly, the minister's words. In fact, Herrick says, the minister's words had nothing to do with it. In fact, my thought was, child abuse. Why would any God of love put his only son through a horrible death in order to save us from sin? This central tenet of Christianity has never made sense to me. But it wasn't the minister's messaging. It was his grandson sitting beside him. Herrick turns and looks and sees this kid whose eyes are closed. And he says, my grandson was obviously processing this beautiful idea that Jesus died for him. And this expression on this kid's face was filled with beauty. He was emanating love. And Herrick says, my heart was just brimming at the sight of this beautiful human being sitting beside me. The visage of his face took me to another place. And at this point in the article, the author turns and starts coming around to the point of it all. And for me, at this point in the article, we immediately came to mind. It was the part, the rubber hits the road part of the article. And I couldn't help but immediately think about what we are discerning these days. This progressive grandparent, clearly moved by observing his religiously conservative grandson, goes on to say that truth that we seek in our religions, in all the various manifestations of religion, has nothing to do with the specifics of the rituals that we exercise, the holy writings and scriptures that we embrace, or even the beliefs that we espouse. Instead, truth, this ultimate thing, which we all seek, certainly religious seekers, truth lives in the intimacy of our relationship with God. And these other things are trappings, they're side dishes of a Thanksgiving meal, with the main course being what those other things support. The main course being connection with our beloved divine creator and sustainer. So specifics, details are dwarfed by the reality of the intimacy of this relationship. Now, not everybody agrees with this, and it shows up big time in the story of my own family. Among the 7 of us, 2 parents, 5 kids, there has been, in age order, an evangelical Protestant, a dyed-in-the-wool, my church is the one true church, Catholic, a unification member, otherwise known as Moonies, another evangelical Protestant, there's a progressive girl in there after that, then a devout Catholic, and one more evangelical, super evangelical Protestant. As is often the case, and is certainly the case in my family, with its array of faith flavors, it seems that the further you moved toward the conservative end, the hungrier folks become for the side dishes. That's not a blanket statement. That is certainly the experience in my family, the side dishes. It's decidedly not the case for my chosen church family here. And so I thought of us here at NCC while reading this article, because our affiliation discernment process, where belief and specific doctrines are front and center, really are speaking to this. Now, you might be thinking, yeah, I'm thinking so too, because your affiliation survey is plastered with this BS. Beliefs and specifics, that is. And yes, it is. And while it might sound like I am speaking out of both sides of my mouth, I couldn't agree more with the author, whose supposition is that truth lies in the big R reality. He makes this fascinating point that we all have the ancestors, we all have brains from our ancestors of reptilian ancestors. We're hardwired for survival, and therefore inherently we're self-centered. And yet, each and every one of us has some kind of a relationship with our Creator, even though we might not name it as such, but it's there. And so, despite being side-blinded survivalists, there are momentary times when we set our survivalist instincts aside and allow ourselves to step into this other reality. I have this visual of myself on a rock climbing wall. You know what they are, these manufactured vertical surfaces with these little pegs that you're supposed to clutch onto and climb up to the top. I have never and will never do this. And while it is decidedly not a part of my personal repertoire, there are times when I imagine myself on this wall because of the clinging aspect. I'm clinging for what feels like my survival in these imaginings. What am I clinging to? What are you clinging to that inhibits your ability to be free enough to go into this other reality? This author beautifully describes it as a reality of goodness, beauty, and love. He says, I get glimpses of it. It's an encounter with God, and it is so different from my normal, mundane consciousness. And he goes on to say, different things usher us to this reality, but universally, none of us will be ushered to it by these mechanisms of Scripture being the way or beliefs being the only way. It's like these things are the Riesling that goes with the dessert. You choose your wine, but it's all about the sweetness of the dessert. And he makes a point about that when he's talking about having traveled in Northern Europe. He's talking with the guide there, asking him about religious stuff. What's the religious background of your people here? Well, mostly Lutheran. Oh, how many people tend to go to church? Not many, maybe 10%. But we're not atheist. We love God, for sure. But we really just don't get into the Christian doctrine that much. And from reading the survey responses that have come in so far, there are many of us here who can relate to that. And then there are many, like the author's grandson, who very much are moved by those very same doctrines. It's for us to identify what supports and ushers us to the entree, to the sweetness of the dessert. This, my friends, was the message of Jesus. Hear the whispers of these invitations of truth and then act upon them. And if you bypass all of the ensuing details of doctrine, and if you start at the very beginning, you'll remember that Jesus did not speak of labels. He spoke of love. And when we do this, the world becomes a better place. And we individually become a better place. And relevant to our message today, our beloved NCC community becomes a better place. My friends, we are on the move these days, discerning a place to call home. Who are we going to be affiliated with? Our metaphorical walls are indeed alive with the sound of movement these days. But let us never overlook the deepest, truest movement of all, the movement we were created for. And the rest, the actual walls that we'll end up in, whoever we end up being affiliated with, it's important. It is important, but it will always be a side dish to our connection with God. And through that connection, our connection to each other. That's all I have for today. I'll be interested to hear what you think about it. And we'll also say to you that next week, after Karen and I, and then the rest of the new home, or not new home folks, the affiliation folks, pull together the data that represents the voice of our community, we're going to be knee deep in what I just disavowed. Knee deep. Because it has its place as long as we are very clear what its place is. We have a lot on our plates right now. This is a side dish. Look forward to hearing your thoughts.